1% of all law firm owners will ever quadruple their marketing budget ever, right? In any capacity. So I can choose to focus on all those negatives, or I can choose to focus on what if it does work.
June of 23, and I think I still hold the record for the fastest in doubling our revenue. June of 23, we doubled immediately to 76,000. We closed out 2023 at just over a million in revenue, 24 at just over 2.6 million. And so for the second year in a row, we more than doubled our revenue.
Really a common theme when I talk to successful lawyers, such as yourself and other clients that we have as well, is there's this theme where they've been willing to do what is not the norm in the industry.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Law Firm Growth Acceleration Podcast. We have a special guest on today, the one and only Josh Turner. And Andy and I are going to be probing into the crazy growth that Josh has seen in his firm and how he's accomplished that. Josh is, full disclosure, a client of S&B, I think practically for every single service that we have as a company. But aside from that, Andy and I working with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of law firm owners, we've realized that our services can only get someone so far, with the mindset of the owner being either the limiter or the accelerant of someone's success, right? And so something in Josh's mind is propelling this success. So super excited to probe into it. And Josh, what I'd like to start with, and then Andy and I are going to interrogate you, just like you do as a lawyer, is where were you before you kind of had this transformation? Where was your law firm kind of floating around? That's what we see with most people who, encounter S&B, is they're kind of treading water and doing the same thing year over year over year. So what did that look like? Where were you at in revenues during that time period, and for how long? And what was life like then? And then where have you gone over just the last 3 years? And then where are you going in 2025? So kind of break through kind of where you were, where you are now, and how, and where you're going in 2025.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. I opened my firm in 2019. I never wanted to open my own firm. Was happy at another firm, left there over some differences in marketing ideas, actually. Was going to take some time off and go join another firm. My clients had different ideas within a day or so of leaving. They all contacted me, said, "What are you doing?" So talked with them, kind of took the plunge into opening my own firm. The plan was just to do it to take care of them and then still take my break, go join another firm. Built my own horrible GoDaddy website, probably one of the worst websites I've ever seen. But it continued to grow. At the time, I was working out of my house. My grandmother was my paralegal. She refused to let me pay her. But we did about 290,000 my first year in revenue. So we opened January of 19, December of 19, ended the year 290 in revenue, with about 90% profit because I had no overhead. In 2020, I really thought I would end up closing the doors because I actually moved. I'm in the Phoenix area. I had lived in the West Valley my whole life. 2020, I got married. I moved to the East Valley. I had done no advertising. So everything I was word of mouth, just referrals. Not having anything on the East Side, I figured I'd be closing up, going to join another firm. We continued to see pretty good growth. We did right around 300 again, 2020. Where we started to change and go down was in 2021. My daughter was born and she had a lot of health issues. Bill and Andy, I know we've talked about this before, but she had to have a lot of surgeries where she had her entire skull rebuilt. By that time, I had myself, a full-time paralegal, an office manager, and a receptionist. And so 2023, kind of the tail end of all of her surgeries, her last surgery was January of 23. By that point, I've been out of the office a good amount of time because of all of her appointments. And we saw revenue decline to about 25 to 30,000 a month. And so May of 2023, I'm having a very hard conversation where I'm thinking of closing the doors. I'm taking out pretty significant loans just to make payroll, and talking to my wife about what we're going to do. She had stopped teaching. She was a teacher when we got married. And then when our daughter came, she stopped teaching. We were actually having discussions about whether she would need to go back to teaching for a while. And I was pretty broken with all of that. On a whim, I had heard about SMB from another colleague of mine who I trusted. They're members now and clients of SMB, and I figured I would sign up for it, give it a try as a last ditch effort. And so May of 23, our total revenue was 33,000. June of 23, and I think I still hold the record for the fastest in doubling our revenue. June of 23, we doubled immediately to 76,000. We all of 23 from January to May, we did about 150,000 in revenue. We closed out 2023 at just over a million in revenue. And so from June to December, we did over 750,000 roughly. And it's been tremendous. We set a goal for 24. I was very aggressive. I wanted to try and see if we could hit 4 million. We didn't hit 4 million, but I'm ecstatic with what we did do, because we ended 24 at just over 2.6 million. And so for the second year in a row, we more than doubled our revenue. We also added 3 new attorneys, 3 paralegals, a COO. We're now adding a marketing director and 5 virtual assistants that handle all of our inbound calls. And so that's where we've been. I've set another very aggressive goal for 2025 to try and hit 10 million in revenue. I'm predominantly a family law firm, but we've actually just broke into starting criminal law. I have one of my attorneys that has a criminal law background. She wants to transition to family law, but she's also decided to keep doing criminal law and has launched that side of the practice. We've also launched an entire estate planning division. So now we do family law, estate planning, and criminal law.
Is that it?
That's it.
No, that's crazy. And I do think you have the record for fastest person to come in, or fastest law firm to come into our program and double their revenue, which is pretty substantial. You said $10 million is your goal in 2025, right?
Yes.
And I want to talk about that for a second, because I talked to a lot of family law attorneys, criminal defense attorneys, and they just feel that these numbers are impossible, right? Like, oh, I couldn't do that I'm a solo family guy. I'll do $500,000 this year, right? Like, what do you think in your thinking makes you different? That, like, did you always believe that you could do $10 million, or has something changed in your life or in your mindset or in your reality that has made it so that you can actually have the audacity to name this goal?
Yeah, I think it's, a couple of things. It's having the right support system, both on the personal level, but also on the professional level. Even hitting 2.6 million, we missed our 4 million goal, but I was ecstatic with 2.6, because in doing 2.6, I was still the only attorney for about 6 months of the year. My 3 other attorneys I now have didn't come to join us until July and August. But I had the support staff. I had excellent paralegals, legal assistants that allowed me to take more cases where they were doing what they needed to do, so I could focus on, the court hearings, that type of stuff. On the personal level, my amazing wife, handling everything on the home front, helping me prioritize ultimately what's important. We also just welcomed our daughter 2 weeks ago, so I have a 2-week-old now.
Congrats.
So that brings us up to 3. But it is also the mindset. I when I looked at this year's goal, part of me said, let's make it easy for 25. Let's just try to double again. I know everybody says once you pass that kind of 3 million mark, the 3 million and above makes it a lot harder to grow. But at the same time, I didn't want myself and my staff to become complacent. And I felt that if we just set a goal of doubling, it would really breed complacency. And so I said, let's be aggressive. With our workshops that we do with you guys, I know that in December, it's actually a new location that I know will be a lot of fun. And so I told all my staff that if we're on track in the middle of summer, end of the summer, to hit our goal, the firm is going to bring all of the staff out a week early.
Nice. You know what's funny is that so I've always told this story about how I used to work at Carrabba's in high school, or so, yeah, no, sorry, when I was in college. after I graduated college, I couldn't find a job. So I ended up working at a place called Fleming's, which is a restaurant. And have you ever had a chocolate lava cake where
Yeah.
it's basically like you cut into it and the chocolate flows out? You know what I mean? So the way that you have to make those things is you have to like slather butter inside of a coffee cup, right? And it's so hard to do because you have to use your finger and slather it in there. And I was working as a prep chef. And I was talking to my manager at the time, and I was like, I can't do this perfectly like you're telling me to do it. He's like, well, here's the thing. We try to do it perfect because we know we're not going to do it perfect. But if we try to get it perfect, that's going to mean that we're going to get it really good. Not perfect, but we're going to get really good, right? And I kind of look at goal setting the same way. Whereas you set a goal of $4 million, right? And you didn't hit the goal of $4 million. You hit $2.6 million. But what was it the year before? What did you do the year before that?
1,030,000.
Okay, 1,030,000, right? So if you would have set the goal at 2.6, you probably wouldn't have hit 2.6. You probably gotten like, 2.1, 2.2 or something like that, right? So it's like by trying to get by being very ambitious and by going for something bigger, even if you don't hit it, you're still going to be really, really good. And I think that that's something that a lot of people kind of miss. And we even do that with SMB team. I mean, most of our goals that we have are stretch goals. And I don't know that we've ever actually hit our A goal because I think our A goal makes it so that we can hit the B and the C goal, which is actually probably what maybe sane people would put the A goal at. You know what I mean? Like it's really interesting.
Yeah, and I think the other component is a lot of law firm owners don't know the numbers and don't want to dive into them.
Mm,
So they say, "Hey, this isn't realistic. I can't do this." Well, what's your, what's your acquisition cost? What's your all of those numbers. And I've had to learn that as well. And it took me a long time because I don't have a business background. I
mhm.
tried to do QuickBooks for myself my first 6 months, and I was running the firm, and I was like, nope, can't do this. But once you get to know those numbers, then you can set, yeah, 10 million is a stretch, but knowing the numbers, it shows me how to get there. It conveys the plan to my team and shows us how we're going to do it as a team.
Yeah, yeah. And then it allows you to actually, see progress and you have a goal that that's always just out of reach almost. It's that it's the carrot that you're always chasing.
So
Oh good. Yeah, Bill.
yeah, so what I wanted to ask Josh is your mindset around delegation and finding experts in areas that maybe you're not the best at, serving your firm within, which, Andy and I probably in our company are the least talented people at the most things, right? Like Andy and I are the first people in our company to admit, like, this is not our zone of genius. X thing, whatever that is, building someone's landing page, which we have a team for, building someone's Google ad account, from the ground up. These are all things that we've done when we had to, when we were building the company, which most entrepreneurs do, right? You suck it up, you do it yourself. And some entrepreneurs, the majority, 80% of businesses have zero employees. I just re-looked up this statistic the other week. 80% of US businesses, and those businesses average 50 grand a year in revenue, which is insane. Why would you quit a job and start your own business to make less than you were probably making at your job and do everything yourself? It sounds like a terrible deal, and that's 80% of businesses. But then there's people like you and like Andy and like myself and other entrepreneurs who are very quick to admit the things that they are no longer going to be doing in their business. So for you, you're using one of our fractional CFOs, fractional COOs. You're using our full service marketing solution. You're using our virtual assistant, attorney assistant. And so it seems to me like you have a mindset where it's like, well, I'm not going to be the COO of this company. I'm going to find someone else to. I'm not going to be the CFO of this company. I'm going to find someone else to. So, what is that mindset? And if you were to kind of categorize it, like, why would somebody be, other than you, a COO of your firm? Why would somebody other than you be the CFO of your firm? And why would you hire someone on a fractional basis to do that? Because it's something I'm very fascinated with.
Yeah, well, I think it's a couple thoughts, especially in the legal market. The first thing is getting over your own ego and pride. especially as lawyers, we like to think we know everything or that we can find out everything. And I went in with that mentality. I was like, I can do my own books. I can handle QuickBooks. I can build my own website. And it was also out of necessity because when I left my firm and decided to open up my own, it was, cashed out my retirement, was like, I'll try to give this, a go. My first client, they owed me about 20,000 and she was trying to convince me to do a trade. I'm a car guy. I love cars. She was trying to convince me to let her give me a 66 Mustang in exchange for payment. And while I would have loved that, I also had bills to pay. Now I have a 66 Mustang. I was able to buy one just a few days ago. But it's getting over that pride and understanding that for your success, for your health and your company's success, you don't know everything. So you have to first figure out what you don't know. I'm a pretty good attorney. I'm a pretty good administrator in managing people in leadership, but I can't tell you the first thing. When I started with SMB and started hearing LSA, I thought it meant legal service agreement. I had never heard of a local service ad. I couldn't tell you the difference between that and PPC. I had to learn that quite quickly. I had to learn, all of these different areas, the financials, the budgeting. For me, budgeting was okay. This much came in. This is how much we have to spend, and don't go over because I don't want my bank account in the negative. But now having that in place, we had a full-time COO, which was great. Now we're using the fractional, and I think it's going to work out better because it's allowed us to focus in and dial in more, especially because the fractional COO that we now have and CFO, they're very well versed in their field, and they're teaching me stuff that I'm still learning, and and making sure that for the health of the firm. So I think the first thing is setting aside that pride, knowing what you don't know, and then for your own health, so you're not burning the candle at both ends of the stick and trying to figure it out. And for the health of your company, delegating it and picking those experts and letting go a little.
I always talk about something called the vacation test. And the vacation test, for anyone who doesn't know what that is basically if you ask yourself, how long could you go on vacation to like a desert island with no phone, no email, no communication with your office at all before the wheels fall off and, everything falls apart and your clients get mad and you start losing money, right? But vacation's great, but there's also what I call the hospital test. And the hospital test is, let's say, God forbid, you're in the hospital or a loved one is in the hospital or something like that. How long can you go before the wheels fall off your law firm and you end up being in a situation that is not a good situation where clients are getting mad and you're losing clients, you're not making money, staff starts like it can be a real serious situation. You found yourself in that situation. How did being prepared affect some of the challenges that you've had recently? And I know you mentioned your daughter. I know there's been some other stuff that has gone on that I'll let you decide what you want to share or not. But how has basically having a law firm that is built this way rather than one that just solely relies on you, how did that play a part in some of these challenges that you had?
Yeah. So, from my daughter to when we joined SMB, certainly was not prepared, and I think, that's pretty obvious by the significant drop in revenue. As we're starting to do better, things are going well. I'm like, all right, we're in the clear. And then actually last February, driving back from an appointment with my wife on my way to the office, and somebody turned left at a red light right in front of me, and pretty much hit head on. And it left me with some issues that, after 4 surgeries are pretty well resolved now. Other issues I'll be dealing with for the rest of my life. I will now have migraines for the rest of my life. I'll have, vision impairment for the rest of my life. Immediately after the accident, I could not string 3 words together. In fact, the next day when I was in the hospital, they asked me what I did for a living. And while I could see the word attorney, I could not speak it. And that was terrifying because I talk for a living. Yeah, but I had a good team in place that, that allowed us to get through. We did see an income drop because again, being the only attorney, but clients were still coming in. The immediate stuff was getting done. Fast forward to now, there's been still some complications from the car accident. I was diagnosed with this very unknown disease called amyloidosis. It's basically an unnatural protein, and it can come from a number of different ways. Some of the more severe ways can cause Alzheimer's or dementia, or basically have to be treated like it's cancer. Fortunately we've done all the testing, and it looks like it was just a result of the car accident and the inflammation in my arms from all the surgeries and everything that came out of it. So very lucky there, but I'll still have to watch that, make sure it doesn't spread and stuff like that. And then now with my daughter being born and the team that I have right now, I haven't been into the office. We're going on a month since I've been into the office.
Wow.
I'm working maybe 2 or 3 hours a day just on my cases and kind of a few things that I need to keep on top of. But even my staff is saying, "Hey, we got this. Don't worry about it." And we're not seeing that revenue drop from me not being there.
Yeah,
And
it's huge. Good.
and on a follow up to that, Josh, the you shared something that it's harder to go from 3 million to X million, right?
Mhm.
And I would say that there's different levels of hard at every level, right? So it's really hard to just be the only employee in a law firm for 20 years, right? Like but that's a different level of hard than having the luxury of being able to go from 3 million to 6 million or 10 million, right? And yeah, there's different complexity and decisions that need to be made. But I would choose the hard any day of the week of going from 3 to 10 million than the hard of, spending 20 years of your life basically trapped as the only employee in a business where everything has to run through you. And, another very interesting thing is look at what you just said, right? Working 2 to 3 hours a day, haven't been in the office for a month. What's fascinating is most small law firm owners that Andy and I talk to have this picture in their mind that if I grow my firm, my life will become harder, right? And I believe the reason that this belief infects the legal industry is because if you only look at growing your firm from the vantage point of your past, of what happened in your past, right? Of, you know, being a 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 employee firm, everything running through you, feeling like you have no freedom, like you're on call constantly for client problems, staff problems, not really having that freedom. Obviously, doubling that is going to double your pain, right? So when we look at the potential of growing our firm, we have to be aware of what decisions we're making in the now that or lack of decisions we're making right now that we're making because we're afraid of the pain that may come in the future by making these decisions or not making these decisions. Example, if I quadruple my marketing budget, I have two choices, right? If I go from spending 10 grand a month to 40 grand a month, right? Which would be a huge revolutionary growth decision for a law firm owner to make. That, 1% of all law firm owners will ever quadruple their marketing budget ever, right? In any capacity, right? But if I quadruple my marketing budget, yeah, most attorneys are going to feel anxiety about what will come from that. A, money's going to come out of my bank account. That's scary. B, is it going to work? C, what the hell am I going to do with all these leads? How am I going to build an intake process for this, right? So I can choose to focus on all those negatives, or I can choose to focus on what if it does work? I can choose to focus on, man, this is going to be great. Now I'm going to have so many leads coming in that I'll be forced to hire someone in intake. I'll be forced to get off the phone. Man, if I do that, I'll then sign up so many cases that I'll be forced to hire another full-time attorney and another full-time attorney. And this will force me to build a self-managing law firm, right? And I would venture to guess that 1%, maybe a half of a percent or 1% of 1% of all attorneys would ever think like that, right? And what's interesting to me is both options are hard, right? Staying small is hard, staying at your current size is hard, and going bigger is hard. But what I would venture to guess, and what I'd love to hear your thoughts on is like when you get to a different level of growth, let's say 3 million to 10 million, your time becomes less and less needed if you do it right. Because as you grow your resources, right? You're doing 300 grand a month right now, probably, right? As you grow your resources. As you grow your resources, you can deploy those resources to have other people do the work, right? And to build a culture and a team of empowered people. So talk me through, you know, what your belief is in terms of as you get bigger, how does your life get easier and how does having more resources, i.e. money in your bank account and coming in every month, how does that make your life easier and how does that empower you to build a firm that's actually valuable and runs itself?
Yeah, and so a couple thoughts on that too. On the idea of both are hard. It certainly is, and there's been sacrifices I've made. As we've grown. One of the things my wife and I talked about is we knew it would be more work in the immediate future, but we also set a deadline that said, by this time I will be cutting back. No more going in at 4:35 in the morning. I'm a morning person. My wife is not. So it's easy for me to get up at 3:30 and hit the road running and be home by 2 or 3. But we've set goals that by this date that it will stop. And at the same time, especially here in Arizona, these small practitioners, these solo practitioners, I give them at best, if they don't start making changes, maybe 3 to 5 years.
Mm,
And one of the reasons for that, and Bill, I know you and Andy know this, is Arizona now allows something called alternative business structures. So a non-lawyer can come in and own a law firm in the state of Arizona. You just have to have a compliance lawyer that works for you. So there's a lot of these venture capital firms and investors that are already coming in and opening up law firms in Arizona. Primarily, you're seeing it in personal injury, mass tort, stuff like that, but it's going to spread to family law and other areas where, these solo practitioners that are not willing to make that change and don't have the mindset that they need to are going to go out of business. And so part of this mentality of, why now, why this is really to survive, you have to. Where there's more lawyers than ever, they still say we're an underserved population, which is why they're allowing this ABS structure. But at the same time, solos fail every day. The attorneys that I have now, the 3 that I brought in were actually all from another firm that had some management issues and some structural issues, and we were able to take over, 3 of their attorneys and their caseloads. But to your specific question of what it's done and why, the resources, and you mentioned, 1% of firms that will quadruple their marketing. When we started with SMB, I think our marketing budget was 4,000 a month. That's what we started with because it's all I could do. But even with that 4,000, it allowed us to 2x in 1 month. I wish I was still only paying 4,000 a month. I think now actually we're up. We pay about 40,000 a month in ad spend between LSA, social media, and pay per click. So we've definitely more than quadrupled. But the payoff has been there. It's funny. I was talking to one of my clients the other day, who's a good friend of mine. He's in the construction industry, and he just opened a new garage door company. And he asked me, he's with a marketing company that gave him a quote for some PPC and LSA type ads. And he asked me if it was worth it. And I told him, you have to be able to, you don't know SEO, you don't know PPC and LSA, you know construction and garage doors. And he's like, yeah, but it's going to cost me 45 grand over the next 90 days. And I said, yeah, but you have to spend that money to make it.
mm,
And that's part of that mentality. You have to pay top of the line people, top of the line benefits and money.
mm,
You want cases, you have to go out there and pay to get them. Gone are the days where you just have your name on a door and people walk in. The everything is online now, so people are going to do that market research, see if you have a footprint. Talk to other people, Google reviews, and so all of that takes resources. And that initial investment, while it may seem scary, pays off and allows you to continue to grow. On the personal side, it's been instrumental. More time with my family. Like I mentioned, I'm a car guy. My wife indulges me in my car buying. I just bought a 66 Mustang not too long ago. That was a rare kind of barn find. It hadn't been driven since 1987. My new Corvette, because I love fast cars and sports cars, that'll be coming at the end of April. It allows me to do more stuff with my family, take more trips, put my son in private school so that we don't have to worry about some of the, educational standards in public school. But it's given me the freedom to do all of those things, but also provide for now 15 different families of those that work for me. And we're fortunate that my firm covers 100% of all benefits. So my employees pay nothing for their health insurance. We cover all of it.
Wow.
So we try to be pretty generous there and take care of them because they know what the expectation is. And the resources that we now have what allowed us to do that.
I watched this speech from Earl Nightingale a couple of months ago, and the whole thing was basically talking about, and I mean, this was, I mean, years ago, but it's the same debate that we're having today as they were having back then. It's basically, there's the 1% and then there's the 99%, right? Um, and what it always comes down to is that if you want to be in the 1%, you've got to be willing to do what the 99% are not willing to do. And that's really a common theme when I talk to successful lawyers, such as yourself and, other clients that we have as well, is there's this one common theme where they've been willing to do what is not the norm in the industry. Going from $4,000 to $40,000 in ad spend, the way that you look at, separating yourself from the law firm and hiring people that are, smarter than you in certain areas and recognizing that you can't do everything and not clinging to the idea of I'm a solo and this is how it's done in this industry and this is how the other attorneys do it, right? I really think that one of the safest ways, not even just in business, but in life, if you want to be successful, is take a look around at what everyone's doing and do something different. Because you could argue that most people don't know what the hell they're doing. And like, if you're just doing something because it's the way it's been done, you should always question that and always look for something else. And I just see that theme over and over and over again, especially with you, where you've done something that's different than most firms and it pays off. And that's why you're able to do these things that you get to. That's why you're able to have nice cars and you're able to, put your son in private school and everything. And it's funny because Bill and I were having this conversation yesterday where it's almost like a reward because it's funny because Hollywood and like the media and everything has like polarized this idea of success. Like we're watching, my wife was watching Deal or No Deal Island. Have you seen that? Like in Deal or No Deal, but like
Yeah.
that show, who's the evil guy in that show? The banker, the guy with the money, right? You know what I mean? But what a lot of times people miss is the fact that, like you said, you have 15 employees that you provide an income for them. You provide a life for them. You provide health insurance for them. You know what I mean? Like and support their families. And same thing with Bill and I. We were having a discussion about taxes yesterday and just how much we have to pay in taxes and everything. And it's like Bill brought up a good point. He's like, it's funny because like the more successful you are, you're almost like, how did you put it? You're like, it's like a penalty for
Penalized.
being. It's like you're being penalized. We have to pay the 38% of our profits have to be paid because of the fact that we provide jobs for hundreds of people and like success for all these law firms and everything. So it's always funny. But the moral of the story is that if you want to do something different, you've got to do so. If you want to be different from everybody else, you have to do different things. And I think that that's something that you've recognized, and that's not an easy thing to do because look around, most people don't do that.
Yeah, and I think it is. It's complacency, and for better or worse, I think in our country, where we are extremely fortunate, we become very complacent, and I think in some sense entitlement comes to mind. But nobody wants to take that risk and work hard for it. It was funny. I was reading an article last night. And obviously everything that's going on in the Los Angeles area is a tragedy right now with all the fires. But the article I was reading is there was a wealthy real estate agent that was being criticized because he was hiring private firefighters to protect his home. Uh, and in the back of my head, I'm thinking, who of us wouldn't do that? If we had the resources, wouldn't we all, take it upon ourselves to, protect what we've earned and what we've worked for? And so I think that's part of that mentality shift too, is we have to have that drive and that hunger to work harder.
and make bigger decisions. Because
Yes.
I think what I'm when I was listening to Andy and your response to Andy, I'm thinking what Josh did that was different than what most law firm owners would do is Josh made bigger decisions, right? To go from four to $40,000 in monthly spend, how much time did that take you to make a decision like that? Like, I don't know, 15 minutes? I don't know. It
Yeah.
gradually happened over, or maybe it's a series of five 15-minute decisions, right? It's like, okay, we're going to go from 4 to 8. We're going to go from 8 to 12. We're going to go from 12. Okay. So did you spend so much blood, sweat, and tears and work really hard to make that decision? No. I mean, there's work that came as a result of that decision, but the real decision you made was you invested in your practice. And sometimes, and this is really counterintuitive, what I've noticed in my own entrepreneurial journey is often the decisions that have the biggest impact take almost no time, but they do take one thing, and that's intestinal fortitude, right? You got to have a stomach for it. You got to have the gut. That's why they call it guts, right? Is you got to have guts. You got to make a decision and believe that something positive is going to have come from that decision, and the work follows in your reaction to the big decision. If you would have just said, let's say the opposite. Let's say Josh Turner works with SMB team a year or two ago and goes, I'm going to try to decrease my marketing budget every month. Let's say that was your decision making, right? Well, if you never made a decision to expand your investment in your firm, all of the work that you've done to build the firm to where it's at and where it's going, all of that wouldn't have ever had the opportunity of happening because you wouldn't have been flooded with the leads to then fuel that, right? And I think you can always choose your problems, which ties to the earlier point, which is, do you want the problem of too little leads or too many leads? It's a choice. Believe me, the leads are out there. I always say this. The only problem that a law firm owner should have is TAM, TAM, total addressable market, right? I don't want law firm owners to have problems with anything other than TAM, right? So what I mean by that is, let's say you target the most specific niche of all niches of law in North Dakota in a 10-mile radius. So let's say that you do underwater basket weaving law, right? Which wouldn't even exist in North Dakota. And you only serve underwater basket weaving cases in a 10-mile radius of northern North Dakota, right? Well, first of all, there's no there's no cases to go around, right? So you run into a TAM problem immediately, right? But what I mean by that is um, you want to, let's say you're targeting a reasonably competitive market in a reasonably competitive practice area, right? So let's say family law, all of Arizona, right? Well, the problem I want law firm owners to have is I want you to eventually one day have the problem of I've run out of demand. I'm marketing. I can't spend any more money online. I can't spend any more money offline. There's no more cases to go around. Like I have capped my market, right? And most attorneys are not ever going to experience that as their problem. They're never going to experience, penetrating full market share. And what's exciting about that is when you have the belief that you have, if you don't stop, right? Which, by the way, once you get the 10 million in revenue, Josh, just speaking from experience, there's going to be plenty of temptations to just stop. There's going to be temptations to just sell the firm. You'll probably be able to get a pretty good valuation at that rate. right? You'll be able to probably get it over a $10 million check for your firm, right? There's going to be plenty of temptations to stop. And maybe that could be the right decision for some law firm owners who don't want to keep doubling down, and that's fine. But if you don't stop with the beliefs that you have, you're going to run into market cap, TAM issues. And then the exciting decision becomes great. How do we take our proven business model and duplicate it in other markets? Or how do we take our proven business model and duplicate it to other practice areas in our same market? And that's already kind of what you've done with the estate planning. But, it's exciting to me. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what I'm sharing is like when you have this growth mindset, you are only limited by the total amount of demand in your market.
Yeah. And so a couple thoughts. You mentioned when I hit the 10 million selling out, I actually, so my firm is now an alternative business structure. And I had done that
Well,
because,
wait, can Andy and I become the non-attorney
yeah,
owners?
we'll talk about that.
Okay.
Because I'm actually, a year and a half ago, right about the same time that I started with SMB, we started this process to be an ABS. And the reason was I had a good friend of mine that was also a client make some loans to the firm. And then we kind of, converted that to a buy-in. But where I'm at now is I just worked out with him that I'm buying back the 49% of my company that he owns.
Hmm.
And so within the next year and a half, I will own 100% of my firm again.
Hmm.
And the decision was made to do that for my family's long-term success. Because I knew as we got, busier and, and more successful, it was only going to cost me more to buy him out. And it was always the plan to buy him out. But I took again that risk and said, look, here's my proposal. You bought in at the X, here's what it's worth now. And for him, it's about a 3,000% return on his investment. And I think that speaks to a number of, again, being willing to take the risk, but also having that core team in place. And I consider SMB part of that. As far as the total accessible market, I look at where we're at right now. My firm practices solely in Maricopa and Pinell County. And the reason for that is I don't want to drive to some of the further places in Arizona where it's going to cost, take 6, 7 hours to get there. With the numbers of divorce and custody cases that are filed every year in those two counties, right now we have less than 1/10 of 1% of the market share.
Mm.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
great.
so
There's
there's
so much
huge
room for
potential.
growth.
Exactly. There on average, there are over 2 million cases filed every year. And when we look at those numbers, Arizona is also one of the fastest growing states. And I'm in a part of my office is in part of Arizona that's even, where all the growth is happening. We have the significant tech investments out here, thousands of people moving in every month. So it's only growing. They just announced a new development about 10 miles from me that over the next 10 years will be another million new homes. So that potential is there. And you have to, again, it's not the old, the days of old where, it's, hey, Uncle Joe referred me to you. You have to have that online presence, the Google reviews, and invest that money, to do it. My firm really lives by the idea that, at 20% of our budget should be, or of our revenue should be spent on marketing. And that's just ad spend. We actually haven't reached that 20% yet. And part of that's because we decided after my car accident, we kind of had to slow down a little bit because it was just me. So we cut back on marketing for a few months as a strategic decision so that we didn't get overwhelmed and we could still provide that quality service. And now we've ramped back up. But the goal is by the end of this summer, that we will be consistently spending even more on marketing to hit that 20% budget goal.
Man, that is a lot. We spend 10% of our revenues on marketing, on ad spend, but we spend 27% of our revenues on sales and marketing combined, which is sales salaries, sales commissions, marketing salaries, marketing spend, ad spend. Um, yeah, that's aggressive. Maybe one way to look at it is because I know the 20/40/10 rule is something that Andy and I teach at our events. Um, Maybe we need to reset the 20/40/10 rule, Andy, because I'm starting to think maybe there's maybe it's not just to spend 20% on marketing ad spend. Maybe there's a different number in there. Maybe it's like 25% on total sales and marketing and how you divide that. I don't know. What do you think, Andy?
Well, that would reduce the 40. So if you're doing sales and marketing, because so for example, when we do, you said 27%, that's including salaries and all that,
Yeah,
right?
so some of that
So
40 would be salaries, you're saying? Yeah, that would make sense.
so the
Yeah.
40, so the 2040, yeah. So for anybody that doesn't know what it is, 20%, the way so this is something that we learned from Chad Dudley, who grew his firm to $100 million a year. The 20-40-10 rule is basically how you allocate your budget. So 20% goes to marketing, 40%, well, it's actually you take your goal revenue, whatever your goal revenue is, 20% of that is what you're going to dedicate to spending to marketing. So if your goal revenue is $1 million, your marketing budget's 200 grand. 40 is what you're going to spend on people. So 40% of your goal revenue is what's eventually going to was what's going to go into salary. So that's going to be, all of your employees and everything. So if you have $1 million goal, about $400,000, 10 is going to be what we call answers. And that's essentially, we don't know the answers to everything. So we have to hire people the easiest way to learn how to do anything is find somebody who's already done what you want to do and pay them to show you how to do it. And that's where the 10% goes. There's no possible way that Bill and I could have grown as quickly as we did. And I know we would not be as successful as we are if we were just figuring this stuff out on our own. We're actually finding other people who have already done things that we want to do, and we ask them how to do it. And some of them are gracious enough to just give us the answers for free, but a lot of people we pay. And that is one of the secrets to life, really. I think so many people are afraid to pay somebody. They would rather go the cheaper route and try to figure it out on their own. But there's nothing more expensive than figuring it out on your own from both a
And
time standpoint and a just cost of losing money because you're doing stupid shit.
and think about this. So it's the beginning of 2025 at the time we're filming this right now. And I just uh, engaged with a nutrition coach, which Andy, you and I have done this a lot, right? We've
I still
had,
have one.
yeah. So I just hired one, and um, I had my call with them, and it's so I'm leading into it should be the 10% should be answers and accountability, because here's
Hmm.
like because I'm thinking uh if I deserve to get into even better shape than where I'm currently at, and not necessarily shape, it's more about mental energy at this point for me, which primarily comes from nutrition and your VO2 max, which is your cardio threshold. And so I talked to this guy, and I was like, um, told him what my goals are, told him I'm kind of screwing up a little bit on my nutrition right now because I'm exercising like a madman. I mean, I'm burning 5,000 active calories a week. You exercise a lot, Andy, so you're probably close to that. And because of that, I've become a little less focused on nutrition. And so I'm eating a little bit more than I should because I can get away with it, right? And because I'm burning so much, right? So I basically told him this problem. He's like, all right, here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna be your coach for 2025, and we're gonna do blah 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 blah, blah, and I'm back to doing daily nutrition tracking and all this stuff, right? Which Andy and I have done for a while. And I'm sending him my daily everything I ate reports, right? So he can analyze it, all that stuff. And I get to the end of the call before I hired him, and he's like, "Yeah, we want to do week to week. I just do week to week." And I'm thinking to myself, I love that you do week to week, but I don't do week to week anything. Like, I want to pay in advance. Like, I want to pay upfront and in advance for a long period of time because I want to pay for what I pay attention to. You don't like if you were to say, "Oh, Bill, it's $50 a week," and you just pay weekly as you go, and something pops up in week two, I might just text him and go, "Hey, I'm busy this week," right? No, if I pay for 3 months in advance up front, I'm way more likely to show up every single week for this guy. So I'm selling him on why he needs to lock me into a long-term contract and force me to pay up front, right? And so for me, I'm thinking to myself, that 10%, which Andy and I practice what we preach here, is very important to understand that your coaches, your consultants, the people that you hire to be on your squad, not only are you going to learn from them and get answers from them, like Andy said, but also they're there to hold you accountable, right? They're there to make sure that the things you know you should do are the things that you actually do, right? And 20 40 10 is, you will never read that in Profit First or any business book. All the popular business books out there, I believe, prey on people's fear and insecurity, which is like, you should only reinvest cash flow that you already have, right? Or you should, profit first, that whole mentality, right? And all this just feeds into people's fear of investing in themselves, and these books become popular because it feeds into a societal narrative, right, of most people's fears. But if you read books on how the companies like that changed history forever scaled, you will never find one book that changed the course of history where the executive team's main focus was profit, right? Or profit first, right? It's just not that simple. It's not that black and white. And that's why the 20 40 10 rule, like, is, it's for the bold few that want to have a bigger impact on their market. And it's an advanced investment strategy based on, if I'm going to go to 10 million a year, I got to work my way up to spending 200 grand a year on marketing. I got to work my way up to having a $400,000 a year staff cost and payroll cost. I got to work my way up to finding mentors that I can get to spend $1 million a year on, 10% of 10 million, because once you get to 10 million, then it's about going to 100 million, right? So the 10% really never changes, depending on the size of your goals.
You know what's interesting, and I got to run in like 30 seconds here, but there's two things. I actually think that the accountability is more important than the even answers, because the truth is you can get the answers from most places, or you can get the answers quickly, but the accountability is what actually makes it stick. Because like, I have I have a nutritionist and a personal, or like an exercise consultant, right? And he told me what to do 6 months ago. The plan hasn't changed. But you can even see right here, this is our app. Like even today, I sent him screenshots of my Fitness Pal because I do that every single day. Second thing I want to point out is that this never occurred to me until you just said that. Um, Chipotle used to be my favorite restaurant, right? Chipotle, I think everybody can agree, is shit now. It's terrible, right? And why is that? It's because they are now focused on profits and profits and profits and profits, right? Every time these businesses that they put profit first, they always go downhill, right? Like it's super super interesting. So it's almost like you have to not put profit first as a safeguard to keeping what you have and keeping it great,
Yeah.
So
Well, Josh, Andy and I appreciate your time greatly. And it's cool that you've delegated yourself, to have all the free time to do this podcast. You have all this free time now. So, where can everyone find you? And really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, so our website's www.turnerlawaz.com. If there are other lawyers that want to talk and ask questions, they can send an email to our intake at Turner Law AZ. I'm always happy to talk. Real brief. I know, Andy, you got to run, but it is that, the profit. You said something interesting that stuck with me. You focus on the profit, well, your firm's going to tank.
mhm.
Yeah, the only way you're ultimately going to be successful is reinvesting that. And so we do the same thing, 20% marketing, 40% employees, 20% overhead and accountability. So kind of split that 10% overhead, 10% accountability and coaching, and then 20% profit margin. Right now, we're running a bit above that 20% profit margin, which is great. But what we do is, we'll do profit draws because I think that's important. But even though we're running right now 30%, we don't take more than that 20%. That extra 10% goes into reserves so that we can continue to grow and we can spend more on marketing. We can invest in the right people.
Yeah, sure.
Well, thank you, Josh. Appreciate the time, and hope everyone enjoyed this another episode of the Law Firm Growth Acceleration podcast with the one and only Josh Turner and Andy Stickle. We'll see you in the next one. Stay great.